The kettle whistled sharply on Michael Reynolds's worn stove, its plaintive cry echoing through the small apartment. Steam billowed like ghosts through the evening light as he reached to silence it. His movements practiced and efficient, despite the exhaustion that clung to his shoulders. Outside, the October wind pressed against the windows, rattling the thin panes that barely kept the New England chill at bay. "Daddy, the mail fell." Michael turned to see his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, pointing at an envelope on the floor. It must have slipped through the mail slot during dinner mac and cheese night. Lily's favorite, or perhaps while he was fixing the persistent leak in the upstairs bathroom. He wiped his hands on a dish towel, crossed the worn linoleum, and bent to retrieve it. The envelope was cream-colored and thick, almost stiff between his fingers. The paper felt expensive, like a 1,000-thread-count sheet at a luxury hotel, something he hadn't touched in years. Gold embossing glinted around the edges, catching the soft kitchen light. He didn't need to open it to know where it had come from, but he did anyway, sliding his thumb under the sealed flap. His stomach tightened as he read the names printed in elegant calligraphy: Catherine Wells and Bradley Harrington, request the pleasure of your company. The Oak Ridge Estate, Saturday, October 15th, 5 o'clock in the evening. Catherine. He hadn't heard her voice in 5 years, but somehow the elegant swirls of her signature beneath the printed text carried the echo of it. Tucked beneath the invitation was a small note card with a single line of handwriting: "Feel free to bring someone if you can." The implied smirk was almost audible. Michael nearly laughed. Nearly. 5 years since Catherine had walked out of their old Boston brownstone, her designer heels clicking decisively against the hardwood floor. 5 years since she'd left her engagement ring on the counter next to a stack of unpaid bills and final notices. That was the week his father died, the week his architecture firm folded under the weight of the recession, the week he'd gained full custody of Lily after her mother vanished to find herself in Europe, the week he went from rising architect with a promising future to an unemployed single father with nothing but his drafting tools and a 2-year-old daughter who didn't understand why mommy wasn't coming home. He folded the card in half and tossed it toward the trash can. It missed, landing silently on the floor. "Did you miss, Daddy?" Lily's voice called from the hallway, soft and sleepy. Michael turned, catching her reflection in the small kitchen mirror. Her auburn curls were wild, her pink pajamas inside out again, one sock missing. She clutched her stuffed rabbit by one well-loved ear. "You're still up, sweetheart?" he asked gently. "I heard the mail thing." She rubbed her eyes. "Was it from the Tooth Fairy?" Michael hesitated, glancing at the fallen invitation. "Just an invitation for a party." Lily's face lit up like a sunrise. "A party with dancing and pretty dresses?" He knelt down to her level, his knees protesting after a long day of maintenance work. "It's kind of fancy, not really for us." Her smile dimmed but didn't disappear. "Is it the princess kind of party, like in my books?" Michael opened his mouth to say no, then paused. Lily's life had been a series of compromises and hand-me-downs. He'd done everything possible to shield her from the weight of what they didn't have: the ballet lessons he couldn't afford, the birthday parties at venues that cost more per hour than he made in a day. But maybe, just once, she deserved to see what princess looked like, even if only from a distance. He pressed his forehead gently against hers. "We'll see." Lily pad. After tucking her back into bed with promises of pancakes in the morning, Michael returned to the kitchen. The invitation still lay on the floor, the gold edges catching the light like a taunt. He should ignore it. Better yet, he should burn it in the sink and wash the ashes down the drain. But some masochistic voice in his gut whispered, "You're not doing it for them. You're doing it for her." He remembered the way Catherine used to look at him near the end, like he was a weight tied to her ankle, dragging her down. "You're too small time," she'd said during their final argument. "Too complacent. I can't spend my life raising someone else's kid." But Lily wasn't baggage. She was the only person in his life who hadn't abandoned him. She was the reason he got up every morning, the reason he worked 2 jobs, the reason he still believed in something better despite evidence to the contrary. The next morning, Michael found the invitation again, still on the floor. slightly crumpled at the edges. That taunting sentence stared back at him. Feel free to bring someone if you can. He should ignore it. He knew he should. But that night, as he lay awake staring at the ceiling, the words morphed in his mind from mockery to challenge. The maintenance job at St. Martha's Episcopal Church in downtown Bedford wasn't glamorous, but it paid steadily. And Father Thomas never looked down on him for bringing Lily along when childcare fell through. The church doubled as a community center and food pantry 3 evenings a week. And Michael had grown to respect the kind of people who kept trying to fix things that others walked away from. That Thursday afternoon, while repairing loose shingles on the church roof, Michael spotted someone sitting alone beneath an ancient maple tree in the courtyard. Even from a distance, there was something compelling about her stillness. She sat straight-backed on the stone bench, focused on a sketchbook balanced on her knees, seemingly oblivious to the brilliant red and gold leaves that occasionally drifted down around her. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple knot, and her coat, though well-made, was visibly worn at the elbows. Michael might not have approached her at all, but Lily, who had been collecting colored leaves nearby, wandered over to the woman with the fearless curiosity of childhood. Michael climbed down the ladder quickly, making his way across the courtyard. By the time he reached them, Lily was already seated beside the stranger, peering intently at her sketchbook. "Sorry about that," Michael said, slightly out of breath. "She's curious about everything." The woman glanced up, and Michael was struck by her eyes, deep brown and intelligent, carrying a quiet dignity despite the shadows beneath them. She looked to be in her mid-30s, with the kind of beauty that wasn't obvious at first glance, the kind that revealed itself slowly, in the thoughtful curve of her mouth and the grace of her hands. "She's fine," the woman said, her voice low and melodic. "She wanted to see the castle." Michael peered at the drawing and felt a small jolt of recognition. It was stunning, a Gothic-style palace with intricate spires and arched windows, framed by ancient willows. The detail was remarkable, each stone and shadow rendered with professional precision. "You're an artist?" he asked, genuinely impressed. "No," she said simply, returning her attention to the sketch. "Not anymore." Lily's mouth hung open in wonder. "It looks magic," she whispered, "like where a princess would live." The woman's expression softened, just slightly. "Maybe it is. I'm Michael," he offered. "And this is Lily." "Ellie," she replied. Without elaborating, he didn't press. There was a careful reserve in her posture, a deliberate distance that felt familiar to him, the protective shell of someone who had learned the hard way to keep the world at arm's length. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked. She shook her head. "Just drawing. The light is good here." "Can you draw me too?" Lily asked suddenly, pointing to the empty space in front of the castle. "And Daddy, so we can live there together." Michael started to apologize, but Ellie was already turning to a fresh page. "Everyone needs a place to live," she said, and began sketching with practiced ease. As she worked, Michael studied her face. The afternoon light caught in her dark hair, revealing subtle auburn highlights. Her hands moved with confidence across the page, but there was a tension in her shoulders, a careful containment in her movements. She wasn't just someone passing through. There was history in her stillness, pain packed neatly behind reserve. He didn't know why, but he felt drawn to her, not romantically, not yet, but as someone who understood what it meant to lose something and keep standing. Father Thomas emerged from the church, calling Michael's name. "The radiator in the basement is acting up again," he said with an apologetic smile. "Be right there," Michael replied, then turned back to Ellie. "I have to finish up some work. It was nice meeting you." She nodded, continuing to sketch. Lily remained beside her, watching the drawing take shape with rapt attention. "She'll be fine with me," Ellie said, seeming to sense his hesitation. "I'm not going anywhere." Michael hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you." As he walked back to the church, he glanced over his shoulder. Ellie was showing Lily how to hold the pencil properly, demonstrating with patient hands. Something about the scene, his daughter and this mysterious woman framed by autumn leaves, stirred something long dormant in his chest. 2 hours later, Michael emerged from the church basement, his hands smudged with grease from the ancient radiator. He was surprised to find Ellie and Lily still on the bench, now surrounded by fallen leaves that glowed like embers in the late afternoon sun. Lily was eating an apple, and Ellie was adding final touches to what appeared to be several sketches. "Look, Daddy!" Lily exclaimed, jumping up and running to him. "Miss Ellie showed me how to draw people, not just stick figures, but real ones with faces that look happy or sad or thinking." Michael smiled, ruffling her hair. "That's wonderful, Lily Pad. And she drew us at the castle." Lily held up the sketchbook, displaying a beautifully rendered scene of the Gothic palace with two small figures standing before it, one tall, one small, holding hands. "It's beautiful," Michael said, genuinely impressed. "You're very talented." Ellie closed her sketchbook and stood. "She's a good student, observant." "Are you leaving?" Lily asked, her voice dropping in disappointment. "It's getting late," Ellie replied, tucking the sketchbook into a worn leather messenger bag. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Lily pressed. "You could teach me more drawing things." Ellie hesitated, glancing at Michael as if seeking permission. "You're welcome anytime," he said. "The church grounds are open to everyone." She nodded, then surprised him by reaching into her bag and tearing a page from her sketchbook. She handed it to Lily. "For you," she said. "Every castle needs someone to live in it." Lily clutched the drawing to her chest. "Thank you," as Ellie turned to leave. Michael found himself speaking before he could talk himself out of it. "I'm going to a wedding this weekend," he said, the words tumbling out awkwardly. "I'd like to have someone come with me. Would you?" Ellie paused, her expression unreadable. "I don't do weddings," she said quietly. Michael chuckled dryly. "Neither do I." She looked at him then. Really looked at him, her dark eyes assessing. "If you're asking out of pity, I'll say no. I'm not," he assured her. "If you're asking because you want a buffer between you and someone who hurt you, I might say yes." His smile was more genuine this time. She was perceptive. "I'm asking because I don't want to show up alone to a room full of people who think I shouldn't have made it this far." Ellie considered this, her gaze steady. Finally, she nodded slowly. "All right then. I'll come." Just like that, the wheels of fate turned. Neither of them knew that the room they'd walk into would never forget what happened next. The next few days blurred in a flurry of preparations. Michael picked up extra shifts at his second job, a maintenance position at an apartment complex, taking on a last-minute plumbing emergency to cover the cost of gas money and a new pair of shoes for Lily, her first fancy flats with tiny rhinestones along the straps. She twirled in them at the thrift store mirror like they were made of crystal. He hadn't seen Ellie again since that afternoon at the church. She hadn't given him a phone number, and he hadn't asked. It was impulsive, he knew. Inviting a stranger, someone who might be struggling herself, to a wedding filled with Catherine's wealthy friends and colleagues. But the moment had felt right somehow, like puzzle pieces clicking into place. Still, doubts crept in as Saturday approached. What if she didn't show? What if she did? But it was awkward and uncomfortable. What if Catherine and Bradley used the opportunity to make him look even more pathetic? Friday afternoon, as he finished repairing a broken window in the church's community room, he heard Lily's delighted squeal from the hallway. He turned to find her running across the polished floor, her sneakers squeaking against the linoleum. Straight toward Ellie, who stood by the stained glass window, talking quietly with Sister Margaret, the volunteer coordinator. "You came back," Lily shouted, her voice echoing off the high ceiling. Ellie turned, surprised. For a moment, her careful reserve cracked, and a genuine smile transformed her face. She knelt to Lily's level, steadying herself as the little girl nearly crashed into her. "I said I might," she said softly. Lily reached into her backpack and pulled out a crumpled drawing, a crayon rendition of the castle Ellie had sketched. Now embellished with a rainbow, several butterflies, and 3 stick figures labeled "Me," "Daddy," and "Miss Ellie" in wobbly purple letters. I made this for you, Lily announced proudly. It's us at our castle. Ellie accepted the drawing with careful hands, studying it as seriously as if it were a masterpiece in a gallery. It's wonderful, she said. You have a good eye for color. Michael approached, suddenly feeling self-conscious in his work clothes, worn jeans and a flannel shirt with frayed cuffs. I wasn't sure you'd show up for tomorrow. I said yes, she replied simply. I meant it. He noticed she held a garment bag draped carefully over one arm. Sister Margaret smiled and handed him a small box. She'll need proper shoes, the older woman said. Donated just yesterday. Your daughter mentioned you had a very important royal ball to attend. Michael raised an eyebrow at Lily, who looked entirely unrepentant. Ellie's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. She's got quite an imagination, Michael said apologetically. Ellie tilted her head slightly. No, she corrected gently. She's got hope. There's a difference. The words settled over him like a benediction, unexpected and profound. The next evening, just before sunset, the sky over Bedford turned a soft golden hue, brushing the treetops with amber light. Michael navigated his aging Honda Civic up the winding drive of Oak Ridge Estate, his heart thudding uncomfortably against his ribs. The borrowed suit from Father Thomas's church donation box itched at the collar, and the tie felt like it was slowly choking him. Lily sat in the back seat, legs swinging, hands clutching her tiny silver purse as if it contained treasure instead of a handful of colored pencils and a folded paper napkin. Are we almost there, Daddy? She asked for the 5th time, pressing her nose against the window. Almost. Lily pad, he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. Beside him, Ellie sat in composed silence. The navy blue dress from Sister Margaret's donation collection fit her like it had been made for her, simple and flowing. Modest, yet unmistakably elegant. Her hair was brushed and loosely curled, catching the evening light. Her posture hadn't changed, still straight-backed. Still composed, but her expression was harder to read. She looked like someone who had spent years learning how to disappear and had just decided not to. Michael found himself staring and quickly returned his attention to the road. You look, he began, then faltered. I mean, wow, she smiled politely. Thank the church ladies. They know how to perform miracles with safety pins. As they crested the hill, Oak Ridge Estate came into full view, a sprawling colonial mansion set amid manicured grounds. With stone steps leading to towering white columns, string lights twinkled in the trees, and waitstaff in black and white moved efficiently between parked luxury cars and the main entrance. Michael swallowed hard, suddenly feeling like an imposter. What was he doing here? This wasn't his world, hadn't been for years, if it ever truly was. Daddy, look at all the lights, Lily gasped. It's just like the fairy castle in my book. Her wonder grounded him. This wasn't about him, or Catherine, or even the past. This was about showing his daughter that she belonged anywhere she went, that no one could make her feel small unless she let them. He parked the car in a far corner of the lot, between a Mercedes and a Lexus that probably cost more than he made in a year. Ellie stepped out of the passenger side with grace that belied her simple origins, smoothing her dress with practiced hands. Ready? She asked, her voice calm and steady. Michael nodded, helping Lily from her booster seat. As I'll ever be. Inside, the ballroom was a testament to tasteful extravagance, crystal chandeliers, marble floors, floral arrangements that probably cost more than his monthly rent. The string quartet in the corner played something classical and refined, providing a soundtrack for the well-dressed guests who clustered in small groups, champagne flutes in hand. Michael recognized the usual suspects from his former life, investment bankers in bespoke suits, attorneys from Catherine's firm, society women dripping in understated jewelry that cost more than most people's homes, people who had never had to check a price tag or calculate whether they could afford both rent and electricity in the same month. Then he saw her. Catherine stood near the fountain centerpiece, radiant in a backless ivory gown that shimmered under the chandelier light. Her blonde hair was swept into an elegant updo, diamonds glinting at her ears and throat. She turned, caught his eye, and froze for just a moment, a nearly imperceptible hitch in her perfect composure. Then her lips curved into a practiced smile. She leaned in to whisper something to Bradley, who turned as well, champagne glass in hand. Their expressions were identical, polite surprise layered over smug expectation. Michael felt the old weight returning, the familiar sense of being measured and found wanting. But then Lily slipped her small hand into his, and Ellie moved a step closer beside him, and suddenly he remembered why he'd come. Not for them, not even for closure, but to show his daughter what it looks like to walk into a room that thinks less of you and still stand tall. Catherine glided toward them, her smile fixed in place. "Michael," she said, her voice a practiced blend of warmth and condescension. "I'm so glad you could make it." Her gaze flickered to Ellie, then to Lily, a flash of genuine surprise crossing her features. "And you brought guests?" "Catherine," Michael replied evenly. "Congratulations. This is Lily, and this is Ellie Thornton." Catherine's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. "Thornton, are you related to the Boston Thorntons?" "No," Ellie replied calmly. "Just myself." Bradley appeared at Catherine's elbow, tall and broad-shouldered in a tailored tuxedo that emphasized his athletic build. His handsome face was arranged in what Michael recognized as his client's smile, all perfect teeth and calculated charm. "Reynolds!" he boomed, clapping Michael on the shoulder with unnecessary force. "Didn't think you'd make it, and with company, no less." His gaze lingered on Ellie, assessing her with the practiced eye of someone who categorized women by their market value. "Wouldn't miss it," Michael replied, the lie smooth on his tongue. "And who's this little princess?" Bradley asked, bending slightly toward Lily with the awkward condescension of someone unaccustomed to speaking with children. Lily regarded him solemnly. "I'm Lily Reynolds. I'm 7. I like drawing and mac and cheese and my daddy." A flicker of discomfort crossed Bradley's face at her directness. "Well, isn't that sweet?" He straightened, turning to Catherine. "Darling, your aunt is looking for you. Something about the seating arrangement." Catherine nodded, her smile never wavering. "We'll catch up later. Michael, enjoy the evening." She paused, then added with practiced generosity, "There's a children's table with activities in the small dining room if Lily gets bored." As they walked away, Michael released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Ellie's expression hadn't changed, but he noticed her shoulders had tensed slightly. "They seem nice," Lily whispered loudly, in the way children do when they think they're being quiet. Michael squeezed her hand. "Let's find our seats. Shall we?" Dinner was served at round tables draped in crisp white linen, each setting a careful arrangement of crystal and silver. Michael, Ellie, and Lily were seated at a table near the back of the room, far from the head table where Catherine and Bradley held court among their closest friends and family. Their table mates were distant acquaintances and work colleagues, people who had known Michael and Catherine before, but not well enough to have maintained contact after the split. They made polite conversation, studiously avoiding any mention of the past, their eyes occasionally darting to Ellie with curious speculation. Lily was given a booster seat and a plate of pasta shaped like bow ties. She beamed at the waiter who winked at her conspiratorially and slipped an extra dinner roll onto her plate. Ellie remained mostly quiet, observing everything with thoughtful eyes the way Catherine checked her reflection in every available surface. How Bradley's laugh was always half a second louder than necessary, the practiced choreography of wealth and status playing out around them. As the meal progressed, Michael found himself relaxing slightly. The food was excellent. Lily was on her best behavior, and no one had made any overtly uncomfortable remarks. Perhaps they would make it through the evening unscathed after all. Then the best man stood, tapping his knife against his champagne flute for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "a few words from our groom, Bradley Harrington." The room quieted as Bradley stood, his broad frame imposing in his custom tuxedo. He raised his glass, his smile confident and slightly predatory. "Thank you all for being here on this perfect evening," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly across the room. "Perfect venue, perfect bride, He winked at Catherine and perfect company. He let that hang in the air just long enough, his gaze sweeping the room. I'd especially like to welcome a few unexpected guests. Life is full of surprises, isn't it? His eyes locked onto Michael, and something in his expression hardened. Old friends we never thought we'd see again, showing up in their Sunday best with equally surprising plus ones. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter moved through the room. Michael felt heat rise in his face but kept his expression neutral. Beside him, Ellie went completely still. But that's the thing about weddings, Bradley continued, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. They remind us of where we've been, and who we're glad we left behind. The laughter was louder this time, edged with cruelty, across the room. Catherine's smile faltered slightly, a flicker of something discomfort regret crossing her features. Daddy, Lily whispered, looking up in confusion. Why is that man talking like that? Is he being mean? Michael opened his mouth to reassure her, but before he could speak, Ellie stood. The movement was small, unhurried, but in a room full of seated guests sipping champagne. It was thunderous. She placed her napkin carefully on her plate, smoothed her dress with deliberate hands, and looked directly at Bradley with eyes that could freeze fire. You've said enough, she said, her voice quiet but carrying in the sudden silence. Bradley blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. Excuse me. Ellie didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. You don't get to mock people just because they didn't fit into your picture-perfect life. That says more about your shallowness than their worth. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Bradley's face flushed, his practiced charm evaporating in an instant. From the corner of his eye, Michael saw an older woman at a nearby table, Catherine's Aunt Helen, smile faintly. Ellie turned to Catherine, her gaze unwavering. And you had something real. You gave it away. That's your right. But don't pretend what you replaced it with is anything but hollow. Then she sat back down, serene as ever. Michael sat in stunned silence. The room buzzed like a struck bell. Catherine looked pale, her perfect composure cracked. Bradley looked like someone had slapped the champagne glass from his hand, his expression oscillating between outrage and disbelief. She's really brave, Lily whispered, her eyes wide with admiration. Michael swallowed hard, his heart pounding in his chest. No, he whispered back. She's just really honest. And for the first time that night, perhaps for the first time in years, Michael felt something unfamiliar wash over him. Pride. Not just in Ellie, but in himself, for standing beside someone who saw value not in wealth or appearances, but in truth. And maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to see it too. The clinking of glasses was slower now, the champagne no longer bubbling with joy but with tension. Conversations dipped into murmurs, as though everyone had agreed silently and simultaneously to pretend that Ellie's words hadn't hit like a silent explosion. Michael sat, heart pounding in his ears, watching Bradley fumble for his composure. The groom gave a tight smile and muttered something into the microphone that no one really heard before handing it off, like it burned him. Catherine hadn't moved. She stood frozen beside the head table, fingers clenching the stem of her wine glass like it might anchor her to the polished floor. Her eyes flickered between Michael and Ellie, something unreadable darkening their surface. And then, like a trained performer on cue, she turned and walked away from the head table, not in a dramatic stomp, not in tears, but quietly, gracefully, the kind of retreat that said, I need a moment, not, I surrender. Yet something in her exit left a hole behind. Michael took a deep breath, shoulders tense. Should we go? He asked softly. Ellie shook her head slowly. No, not yet. He glanced at her, surprised. You're sure? She nodded. Good, because I'm not done watching this house of mirrors. He studied her, the calm in her eyes not arrogance but clarity. She wasn't here to wound. She was here to reveal. Lily returned to the table with a napkin-wrapped cookie, her face lit with the innocent joy of someone oblivious to adult tension. Daddy, she said, climbing into his lap. People are acting weird, but this cookie tastes like Christmas. Michael smiled faintly and kissed the top of her head. I think that's the best thing anyone's said all night. Ellie leaned slightly toward them, resting her arms on the table. She has no idea how much better she makes this room just by being here. Michael looked at her, really looked at her, this woman who had walked into his life just days ago and somehow become the most honest part of it. Neither do you. For a moment their eyes held, and in that silence, surrounded by expensive centerpieces and forced elegance, something unspoken passed between them, a mutual understanding. They didn't belong here, and yet somehow, they were becoming the most real part of this entire illusion. During dessert, Michael slipped away to stretch his legs. He found himself on a stone terrace behind the ballroom. The cool night air a relief after the suffocating politeness inside. The estate grounds stretched before him, illuminated by strategically placed landscape lighting, rolling lawns, ancient oaks, and in the distance, the silhouette of mountains against the star-studded sky. Do you remember this place? A voice asked behind him. He turned to find Catherine standing a few feet away, arms crossed against the evening chill. Her ivory gown gleamed in the moonlight, but without the ballroom's artificial warmth. She looked smaller somehow, vulnerable. I do, he replied. They had attended a charity event here during their engagement, back when he was still climbing the ladder at his architecture firm, and she was a junior attorney with stars in her eyes. It hasn't changed much, she said, moving to stand beside him at the stone balustrade. No, Michael agreed, but we have. Hey, Catherine laughed once, short and sharp. You used to say we'd build a house like this someday, on a hill, with a view of the valley. He smiled, remembering. With a wraparound porch and rocking chairs. And a studio for Lily, she added softly. The mention of his daughter's name hung between them, heavy with implication. A beat of silence passed, filled only with the distant strains of music from inside and the whisper of wind through the oak trees. You look good, Michael, Catherine said finally, her voice carefully neutral. Stronger? He didn't respond. I didn't invite you to humiliate you, she continued, turning to face him fully. He raised an eyebrow. No. Then what was that note supposed to be? She had the grace to look uncomfortable. A joke. A poor one. That's putting it mildly, Catherine sighed, running a finger along the smooth stone of the balustrade. I was curious, she admitted. Curious. If you were still. She hesitated. Still what? Catherine, still broken, still struggling, still proving you made the right choice when you walked out. She didn't deny it. I didn't think you'd bring someone like her, she said quietly. Neither did I, he replied honestly. She's not what I expected. She's not what I expected, he repeated, softer. She's more. Catherine looked down at her diamond engagement ring, twisting it absently. Do you love her? The question caught him off guard. I don't know yet, he said truthfully, but she sees me. And that's more than I can say for anyone else here tonight. For the first time, Catherine looked genuinely remorseful. I thought I needed someone who could protect me from failure, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Turns out I needed someone who could walk through it with me. But by the time I realized that, I wasn't yours anymore. He finished for her. She gave a sad smile. Tell Lily. Tell her I'm glad she has you. Some me. Then she turned and walked back toward the light and laughter of the ballroom, leaving Michael alone with the stars and the weight of words too long unspoken. When Michael returned to their table, Ellie was seated with Lily leaning against her shoulder, eyes closed, cookie crumbs still clinging to her fingers. She didn't last through dessert, Ellie said softly. Michael sat down, his mind still replaying the conversation with Catherine. She's had enough of the fake fairy tale. Ellie glanced at him, something knowing in her expression. And you. He looked across the room to where Catherine had rejoined Bradley, their bodies close but not quite touching, their smiles perfect, but their eyes distant. Then he looked back at Ellie, at the quiet strength in her face, at the gentle way she cradled his sleeping daughter. "I think the real story is just beginning," he said. She gave him a look guarded, almost challenging. "I'm not a storybook ending. Michael," he leaned forward, voice steady. "Neither am I, but maybe we're a second chapter." Ellie didn't reply, but she didn't look away either. And in that long, silent exchange between a man who had once been abandoned and a woman who had once disappeared into grief, something rooted itself deep, not romance, not rescue, not illusion, but something far rarer, recognition, in a ballroom full of noise and surface glitter. Two people who had every reason to hide had just begun to step into something real, not perfect, but honest. And finally, enough. The clatter of silverware and the clinking of glasses had settled into a strange kind of stillness. The band resumed playing, but their notes seemed thinner, like background noise in a scene that had already changed. Michael sat quietly. Lily now curled into his lap, her fingers tangled around his tie, her breathing slow and even. He kissed the top of her head gently, letting her warmth steady him. Across the room, Bradley moved stiffly, like a marionette whose strings had tangled. His practiced charm had evaporated, replaced by tight smiles and overly loud laughter. Catherine had returned from their conversation but seemed distant, her eyes occasionally drifting toward their table with an expression Michael couldn't quite decipher. Ellie hadn't said another word since defending him. She sat composed beside him, her presence quiet but charged, somehow altering the very air around their table. "That was necessary," Michael said softly, breaking the silence between them. She nodded, still watching the room. "You just called out a room full of people who haven't been questioned in years." "I didn't come here to play nice, Michael," she replied, her voice calm. "I came because you asked, and I don't let my presence be ornamental." Michael studied her profile in the soft chandelier light. "You never could be," before she could respond. The wedding planner returned to the microphone, her voice slightly strained. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll indulge us, the bride would like to say a few words." All heads turned as Catherine made her way to the center of the dance floor. Her ivory gown trailed behind her like a river of moonlight, her posture perfect, her face composed but different, somehow calmer. Stripped of pretense, she took the microphone with both hands, holding it like something precious and dangerous. "I had a speech prepared," she began, her voice clear but softer than usual. "Something about love and growth and perfect timing. But tonight, something unexpected happened." She paused, glancing at Michael and then deliberately at Ellie. "I saw someone speak with more honesty in 1 minute than I've seen in years from anyone in this circle, myself included." People shifted uncomfortably. Some froze mid-bite, champagne flutes suspended halfway to parted lips. "I didn't invite Michael here to celebrate with him," Catherine continued, the confession falling into the silent room like stones into still water. "If I'm being honest, I invited him to measure him against the life I've built. I thought I had grown, and that he had not. I thought I had escaped the burden of struggle." She turned fully to face Michael now, her carefully constructed facade crumbling at the edges. "But the truth is, he didn't fail me. I failed him. I left when things got hard. I told myself he was holding me back. But what he was really doing was caring more than anyone should have, to including me." Michael swallowed, his throat tight with unexpected emotion. He felt Ellie's hand find his under the table, a steady anchor in the storm of the past washing over him. "And Ellie," Catherine said, her voice trembling slightly, "I don't know your story, but I know bravery when I see it. You reminded me tonight that dignity isn't about status or reputation. It's about truth. And I owe both of you something I should have given years ago: respect." She handed the microphone back to the wedding planner. No flourish, no dramatic gesture, just a woman who had finally looked in the mirror and recognized her own reflection. No music played, no applause followed, just silence, heavy, thoughtful silence. And then, a slow clap. It came from Catherine's Aunt Helen near the back, firm and unapologetic. It grew one, then two, then a handful, until nearly half the room stood and clapped. not just for what was said, but for what was finally faced. Catherine returned to her seat without fanfare, Bradley beside her, his expression a complex mixture of confusion and discomfort. Ellie looked at Michael, her lips pressed into a small, unreadable smile. I didn't expect that. Neither did I, he admitted softly. But maybe that was her first real gift. Outside, the night had deepened, stars pricking the vast New England sky like diamonds scattered across velvet. The air held the crisp scent of autumn fallen leaves, distant wood smoke, and the promise of frost by morning. Ellie stepped away from the dwindling crowd, her heels crunching softly on the gravel path that wound through the estate's formal gardens. Michael followed a few paces behind, carrying a sleeping Lily against his shoulder, her small body warm and trusting. Ellie stopped beneath an arbor of climbing roses, their blooms faded but still fragrant in the cool night air. She turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, she said quietly. You should know that. I know, Michael replied. But when Bradley spoke like my life was something to be pitied. I saw myself, she interrupted, 5 years ago, sitting in a room I didn't belong in, watching people measure my worth by what I'd lost. The admission hung between them, honest and raw. Michael stepped closer, adjusting Lily's weight against his shoulder. What did you lose? Ellie. She looked away, her profile sharp against the darkness. My son, Samuel. He was 7. Michael inhaled sharply, the pain of her words like a physical blow. I'm sorry. Don't be, she said, her voice steady but distant. He had a heart condition one we thought we could manage. We were wrong. She spoke without tears, but the careful control in her voice revealed the depth of her grief more clearly than any crying could have. After that, my husband left. I quit my position at the university. I disappeared from the life I'd built. It was easier to be unseen than to be reminded of what had been ripped away. And now, Michael asked softly, now I'm learning to breathe again, one step at a time. She gestured vaguely around them. And somehow, this ridiculous invitation you got felt like a doorway I wasn't expecting. One I didn't want, but maybe needed. Michael nodded slowly, then looked directly into her eyes. I didn't bring you here to be a symbol or a shield. I didn't even know why I asked you. Really. But now I think I brought you because you remind me what surviving looks like when it turns into living again. Ellie's throat worked as she swallowed. You don't need me to rescue you. Michael. No, he agreed, stepping even closer. But maybe I want you to walk beside me while I rescue myself. They stood in silence under the canopy of stars, not touching, not reaching, just standing close enough that their breaths began to fall into the same rhythm, from behind them. Lily stirred against Michael's shoulder. Daddy, she murmured sleepily. Is the princess party over? He smiled against her hair. Yes, lily pad. Time to go home. Ellie reached out hesitantly, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's cheek. Did you have a good time, little one? Lily nodded, eyes still heavy with sleep. I liked your brave words and the cookies. Can you come to our house sometime? I could show you my drawings. Ellie's eyes met Michael's over Lily's head, a silent question in them. He nodded, just once. I'd like that, she said softly. The drive home from Oak Ridge Estate was quiet but not heavy. Lily slept peacefully in the back seat, her head tilted against her car seat, one hand still clutching the silver purse as if it contained treasure. Michael kept his eyes on the road, the soft glow of the dashboard washing over his face. But his thoughts were nowhere near the winding curves of the highway. His mind was still at the estate on Ellie's words, Catherine's unexpected confession, and the ripple effect a single act of honesty had left behind. Ellie sat beside him, her bare feet tucked under her, heels long discarded on the floor mat. She hadn't spoken since they'd pulled out of the parking lot, but her silence didn't feel distant. It felt reflective. She finally broke it with a whisper. You handled tonight with more grace than most people ever manage with a script. Michael gave a small laugh. I was trying not to spill wine on my borrowed shirt. She smiled. looking out the window at the passing streetlights. Still, you didn't flinch. Not when he mocked you. Not when Catherine admitted what she did. You stood there like you knew who you were. He nodded slowly. Because for the first time, I think I do. She turned to face him fully. Say it. What? Say who you are. Michael hesitated, the windshield wipers clicking softly against a light drizzle that had begun to fall. I'm a single dad who still forgets school picture days, who can't always afford name-brand cereal, who works too many jobs and falls asleep reading bedtime stories. He paused. But I'm also the guy who stayed when everything fell apart. I stayed. Ellie's throat moved as she swallowed, her voice coming out raw. That matters. It's the only thing that matters. The rest of the drive passed in comfortable silence, the rain a gentle percussion on the roof, the heater humming softly. When they pulled into the driveway of the small duplex Michael rented, Ellie insisted on carrying Lily's shoes and purse while he carried the sleeping child. Inside, he laid Lily gently on her bed, pulling off her party shoes and tucking her favorite quilt around her. She stirred briefly but settled back to sleep the moment her head hit the pillow, clutching her stuffed rabbit when he returned to the living room. Ellie was standing by the bookshelf, arms crossed loosely, examining the framed photos and mismatched collection of books. The small space was clean but worn second-hand furniture, walls that needed fresh paint, a coffee table scattered with Lily's art supplies and several architectural magazines. This place is real, she said, turning to him. Lived in, like nothing's trying too hard. Michael smiled faintly. That's a poetic way of saying the paint's chipped and the faucet leaks. I like chipped paint, she replied. It means someone used to laugh here. He watched her move around the room, trailing her fingers along the edge of the sofa, taking in the crayon drawings tacked to the refrigerator, the small stack of library books on the side table. You don't have to stay, he said, suddenly aware of how shabby it must look compared to the opulence they just left. I know, she said simply. But you can, he added. She turned to him, the soft light from the kitchen catching the side of her face. Michael, tonight was beautiful. It was healing, even, but I still don't know if I fit into your story. You're not a plot twist, Ellie, he said gently. You're part of the reason it turned around. She looked at the floor, her composure wavering for the first time since he'd met her. I haven't been anyone's part in a long time. Michael crossed the room, stopped just in front of her. Then let this be the first place you're not invisible. Ellie didn't cry, but her eyes shimmered in the dim light. I should go, she said softly. It's late, Michael nodded, understanding her need for space after the emotional intensity of the evening. Can I call you, or should I come find you at the church again? A small smile curved her lips. I think I'd like a phone this time. They exchanged numbers, and Michael walked her to the door. Before she left, she turned back, hesitating. Thank you, she said, for asking me to come tonight. Thank you for saying yes, he replied, after she'd gone. Michael stood in the quiet living room, feeling as though something fundamental had shifted in his world. Not dramatically, not with fireworks or declarations, but quietly like the turning of a page, the opening of a door that had been closed for too long. He checked on Lily one more time, then got ready for bed, as he lay in the darkness, replaying the events of the evening. He realized he was smiling. For the first time in years, the weight of the past felt lighter, less like an anchor and more like a lesson, one he was finally ready to learn from. Sunday morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through the curtains, warming the worn hardwood floors. Michael woke to the sound of Lily singing to herself in the kitchen, the clatter of cereal bowls and the thump of the refrigerator door, marking her independent breakfast preparations. He stretched, feeling oddly rested despite the late night. Something had changed, not just around him but within him. The knot of bitterness he'd carried since Catherine left had loosened, not entirely gone but no longer defining his every breath. Daddy, Lily called from the kitchen. I made you breakfast. He found her standing proudly beside the table, where she'd arranged 2 bowls of cereal, slightly overfilled with milk, and 2 glasses of orange juice. Wow, lily pad, he said, genuinely impressed. This looks amazing. She beamed, climbing onto her chair. I'm practicing for when Miss Ellie comes to visit. Do you think she likes Cheerios? Michael smiled, sitting across from her. I think she'd love that you made them for her. When is she coming? Lily asked, milk dribbling down her chin. I don't know yet, sweetheart. We just met her a few days ago. Remember? Lily considered this, spoon hovering midair. But she's our friend now. Right. She made the mean man stop talking, and she has sad eyes but a nice smile, and she draws the best castles. Michael was always struck by his daughter's perceptiveness. Yes, she's our friend, and she does have a nice smile. Doesn't she? Lily nodded emphatically. She looks happier when she's with us. Does she? Uh-huh. Like how you look happier when you're not thinking about money. Michael nearly choked on his cereal. What makes you think I worry about money? Lily gave him a look far too knowing for her 7 years. Daddy, you make your thinking about money face when we go to the grocery store. And when the mail comes? And when my shoes get too small? He reached across the table, taking her small hand in his. I'm sorry if I worried you. Lily pad. Dad's stuff can be complicated sometimes. She squeezed his fingers. That's okay. You're good at being a dad even when it's hard. Her simple faith in him was humbling. Thanks, kiddo. I try my best. I know, she said matter-of-factly. That's why Miss Ellie likes you. Michael raised an eyebrow. Oh, did she tell you that? Lily rolled her eyes in exaggerated exasperation. Daddy, she doesn't have to say it. I can tell. It's obvious. He laughed, shaking his head at his daughter's confidence. Well, I hope you're right. Monday morning returned Michael to his regular routine, dropping Lily at school before heading to his maintenance job at the apartment complex. The day passed in a blur of unclogged drains, replaced light fixtures, and patched drywall. Physical labor had become a kind of meditation for him over the years, a way to quiet his mind while his hands remained productive. He hadn't texted Ellie yet, unsure of what to say. How did you follow up a night like Saturday? Thanks for defending my honor and revealing your deepest pain. Looking forward to our next emotional revelation. By late afternoon, as he was finishing up at St. Martha's, replacing shingles damaged in the recent storm. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He climbed down the ladder and pulled it out, surprised to see Ellie's name on the screen. Is Lily allergic to anything? I thought I might bring cookies tomorrow afternoon. If you're free, he smiled, typing back, no allergies. She'll eat anything with sugar. We're free after 3:30. School pickup. The reply came almost immediately, 3:45 then. I'll bring my sketchbook too. That night, as he helped Lily with her homework, he mentioned that Ellie would be visiting the next day. Really? Lily's face lit up like Christmas morning. Can I show her my room and my special drawing book? And can we have hot chocolate even though it's not Christmas? Michael laughed. Yes, yes, and yes, but remember, Lily pad, Miss Ellie is still getting to know us. Let's not overwhelm her. Okay. Lily nodded solemnly. I'll be super calm. Daddy, like a yoga lady. The next day, Michael found himself straightening the living room during his lunch break, picking up stray toys and wiping down the coffee table. He even changed the burnt-out light bulb in the hallway that he'd been meaning to replace for weeks. It wasn't that he was trying to impress Ellie. She'd already seen the real state of their lives, but he wanted the space to feel welcoming. At 3:30, he picked up Lily from school, enduring her constant stream of questions about when Ellie would arrive and what they would do. By the time they got home, Lily was vibrating with excitement, rushing to change out of her school uniform into what she called her artist clothes leggings with paint splatters and a t-shirt featuring a rainbow unicorn. At precisely 3:45, the doorbell rang. Lily raced to answer it, Michael following close behind to ensure she didn't fling the door open to a stranger. Ellie stood on the porch, looking different than she had at the wedding. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore jeans and a soft blue sweater that made her eyes appear deeper, more vibrant. She carried a paper bag in one hand and her leather messenger bag in the other. Miss Ellie, Lily exclaimed, bouncing on her toes. You came! Do you want to see my room? I have all my drawings in a special book. And Daddy hung up the castle you made me right above my bed so I can see it when I wake up. Ellie smiled, her expression warming as she met Lily's enthusiasm. I'd love to see your room, she said. But first, I brought something. She held out the paper bag. Oatmeal cookies. I made them this morning. Lily accepted the bag with reverence. You made these in a real oven and everything. With real butter and everything, Ellie confirmed, stepping inside as Michael held the door for her. Thank you for coming, he said softly. And for the cookies. Thank you for having me, she replied, her eyes meeting his briefly before Lily grabbed her hand and began pulling her toward the back of the house. Come on, I want to show you my special corner where I draw. Michael watched them go. Lily chattering excitedly, Ellie listening with genuine interest. He headed to the kitchen to make coffee, giving them space for their artist-to-artist bonding. 20 minutes later, they emerged from Lily's room, Lily still talking animatedly about color theory and perspective, concepts Michael hadn't realized she knew. Daddy, Miss Ellie says I have a good eye for composition. That means I know where to put things in my pictures to make them look balanced. That's wonderful. Lily pad, Michael said, carrying mugs of coffee to the living room. Hot chocolates on the stove when you're ready. Ellie accepted the coffee gratefully. She's remarkably talented for her age, she said, keeping her voice low as Lily darted back to her room to retrieve something. Has she had any formal instruction? Michael shook his head. Just school art class and YouTube tutorials. We can't afford. He stopped himself, not wanting to emphasize their financial limitations. But Ellie just nodded, understanding without judgment. Sometimes natural talent is better without too much structured interference anyway. She has an instinctive sense of what works. Lily returned with her sketchbook, proudly displaying pages of drawings, castles, animals, and people who looked suspiciously like Michael and Ellie, always with a little heart drawn somewhere nearby. These are wonderful. Lily, Ellie said, examining each page with serious attention. You're already developing your own style. Lily beamed under the praise. Can you show me how to draw people better? Mine always look kind of funny, especially their hands. Hands are the hardest part, Ellie agreed. Even professional artists struggle with them. But I'd be happy to show you some tricks. For the next hour, they sat at the kitchen table, heads bent over paper, Ellie demonstrating techniques and Lily following along with fierce concentration. Michael moved around them, preparing a simple dinner, occasionally stopping to watch their interaction. There was something about seeing them together, Ellie's patient guidance, Lily's eager learning that stirred a deep longing in him, not just for companionship, but for this particular kind of sharing. This exchange of knowledge and passion that had nothing to do with obligation and everything to do with genuine connection. As they ate dinner, spaghetti with garlic bread. Nothing fancy, the conversation flowed easily. Ellie asked Lily about school, her friends, her favorite books. She listened to the answers as if they were the most fascinating things she'd ever heard. Do you still teach art, Miss Ellie? Lily asked, twirling pasta around her fork. A shadow crossed Ellie's face. No, not for a long time. But you're teaching me, Lily pointed out. Ellie smiled softly. I suppose I am. Were you a teacher before? At a school? Michael started to intervene, sensing they were approaching sensitive territory. But Ellie met his eyes with a small nod, indicating it was okay. I was a professor at Boston University, she said. I taught art history and studio courses. Lily's eyes widened. A professor, that's like super smart. It just means I spent a lot of time studying something I love, Ellie explained. Why did you stop? Lily asked, innocent but direct in the way only children can be. Ellie's hands stilled on her napkin. Sometimes, Lily, when very sad things happen, we need to step away from our regular lives for a while, to heal. Lily considered this seriously. Like when I broke my arm last year, and I couldn't do gymnastics until it got better. Something like that, Ellie agreed gently. Except some hurts take longer to heal than broken bones. Lily reached across the table and placed her small hand on Ellie's. I'm sorry you got hurt. Miss Ellie, I'm glad you're feeling better now. Ellie's eyes glistened briefly. Thank you, Lily. I am feeling better. After dinner, as Lily worked on a new drawing at the coffee table, Michael and Ellie stood in the kitchen, washing dishes side by side. I hope Lily's questions weren't too much, Michael said quietly. She doesn't always have a filter. Ellie handed him a wet plate to dry. It's refreshing. Actually, adults tiptoe around grief like it's contagious. Children just want to understand. Still, if it gets overwhelming, I'll tell you, she assured him. But being here, with you too, it's the first time in years I've felt like myself. The old me, before Samuel died. Not completely, but glimpses. Michael set down the dish towel and turned to face her fully. Who was she? The old Ellie. A small, sad smile curved her lips. Professor Eleanor Thornton, Department Rising Star, published in major journals, guest curator at the MFA, always juggling too many projects and loving every minute of it. She sounds impressive, Michael said. She was also Samuel's mother. Ellie continued softly. The one who made dinosaur-shaped pancakes on Saturdays and knew all the words to every Disney song. The one who believed her marriage was solid, that her life was set on an unshakable foundation. Michael leaned against the counter, listening. When Samuel died, that foundation crumbled. 3 months later, David, my husband, told me he couldn't handle the constant reminder. He moved to Chicago, filed for divorce. I stopped going to faculty meetings, then to classes. Eventually, I stopped going anywhere. And now, Michael asked gently. Ellie looked toward the living room, where Lily was humming to herself as she colored. Now I'm here, washing dishes in your kitchen, teaching a 7-year-old how to draw hands, and feeling something I thought was gone forever. What's that purpose? She said simply. Connection, the sense that I might still have something to offer. Before Michael could respond, Lily called from the living room. Daddy, Miss Ellie, come see what I made. They dried their hands and went to join her. Lily held up a drawing of 3 figures standing in front of a house. The details were childish but improving under Ellie's tutelage, the proportions more accurate, the faces more expressive. Above the trio, Lily had written in careful block letters, My family. Ellie's breath caught. Michael watched her face, saw the complex emotions flickering across its surprise, pain, and something that might have been hope. It's not exactly right yet, Lily said, frowning critically at her work. The house should be more like a castle, but it's us. It's perfect, Ellie whispered. Later, after Lily had been tucked into bed with one of Ellie's cookies and a new drawing technique to practice in the morning, Michael walked Ellie to her car. The night was cool, stars bright in the clear October sky. Thank you for today, he said, hands in his pockets against the chill. Lily adores you. She's extraordinary, Ellie replied. You've done an amazing job with her. Michael, he shook his head. Most days I feel like I'm barely keeping up. That's not what I see, she said, turning to face him fully. I see a child who knows she's loved, who feels secure enough to ask questions and take creative risks. That doesn't happen by accident. They stood in silence for a moment, breath forming small clouds in the crisp air. I'd like to see you again, Michael said finally. Not just for Lily, for me. Ellie's eyes met his, searching. I'm not ready for, I don't know if I can, I'm not asking for anything specific, he assured her. Just more of this. Whatever this is. She nodded slowly. I'd like that too. As she drove away, Michael remained on the porch, watching her taillights disappear around the corner. For the first time in years, the future felt like something to move toward rather than something to brace against. Inside, he checked on Lily one more time, smiling at the sight of her sketchbook clutched against her chest even in sleep. On her bedside table lay one of Ellie's cookies, carefully wrapped in a napkin and saved for breakfast, in the quiet of his own room. Michael picked up his phone and sent a simple text. "Thank you for bringing yourself back into the world. We're better for having you in it." Ellie's reply came just as he was drifting off to sleep. "Thank you for giving me somewhere to belong." Over the next few weeks, Ellie became a regular presence in their lives. She joined them for Sunday brunches and Wednesday art sessions. She helped Lily with a school project about famous buildings, bringing architecture books from the university library that made Michael's fingers itch for his old drafting tools. She brought homemade bread and showed Lily how to knead dough, filling the small duplex with the comforting scent of baking. They developed rituals, hot chocolate with cinnamon after walks in the park, impromptu sketching competitions that Lily always judged with solemn fairness, movie nights where they introduced Ellie to Lily's favorite animated films. It wasn't dating. Not exactly. There had been no romantic declarations, no kisses at the door, but there was something growing between them, a comfortable intimacy, a shared language of glances and small gestures. When their hands brushed passing the salt, neither pulled away too quickly. When Lily fell asleep between them on the couch, their eyes met over her head with quiet understanding. One evening in late October, while Lily was at a rare sleepover with a school friend, Michael invited Ellie over for dinner, just the two of them. He wasn't sure if she would accept, but she did, arriving with a bottle of wine and a nervous smile. "This feels different," she admitted, as he took her coat, "without Lily as our buffer." "Good different or strange different?" he asked, hanging her coat in the closet. "Both, I think." She followed him to the kitchen, where he had prepared a simple but thoughtful meal: grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, crusty bread from the bakery near the church. They ate at the small dining table, conversation flowing easily despite the change in dynamic. They talked about books they loved, places they'd traveled, the architecture Michael still dreamed of designing someday. Ellie spoke more openly about her academic career, her eyes lighting up as she described the Byzantine art that had been her specialty. "You miss it," Michael observed, as she explained the intricate symbolism in medieval church mosaics. She nodded, swirling the wine in her glass. "I do, more than I've let myself admit. Have you thought about going back to teaching, or even just to your own art?" Ellie was quiet for a moment. "After Samuel died, I couldn't create anything. It felt pointless. Everything felt pointless. But lately, he prompted gently, I've been sketching again. Not just with Lily, but on my own. Nothing important. Just small things, the view from my apartment window, the old oak tree at St. Martha's. It's like a muscle that's stiff from disuse." "That's wonderful. Ellie," she smiled faintly. "It's terrifying. Actually, like I'm betraying him somehow by finding joy again." Michael reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "You're not betraying him. You're honoring him by living fully, by bringing beauty into the world the way you taught him to see it." Tears welled in her eyes. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "I don't," he admitted. "Most of the time I'm just stumbling through, hoping I don't make things worse." "You don't," she assured him, turning her hand to clasp his. "You make things better, clearer." After dinner, they moved to the living room with their wine glasses. The space felt different without Lily's exuberant presence, quieter, more intimate. They sat on the sofa, close but not touching, the air between them charged with unspoken possibilities. "Can I ask you something?" Ellie said, setting her wine glass on the coffee table. "Anything. Why didn't you try to win Catherine back after she left? You loved her once." Michael considered the question seriously. "At first, I was too shocked, too hurt, then too busy just trying to keep Lily and myself afloat. By the time I came up for air, I realized something important." "What's that?" "That love isn't supposed to be a battle. You shouldn't have to convince someone to stay, to see your worth." He looked at her directly. "Catherine left because she wanted a different life, one with fewer complications, more status. That was her right, but it meant she never really saw me. Not completely." Ellie nodded slowly. "And now what do you want now?" "Someone who sees all of me," he said quietly. The architect who still sketches dream houses late at night. The dad who sometimes burns the pancakes but always gets the bedtime voices right. The man who's still figuring it out but isn't ashamed of the journey. Their eyes held, the moment stretching between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. "I should go," Ellie said finally, though she made no move to leave. "It's getting late." "You could stay," Michael suggested, then quickly added, "just to talk longer. Lily won't be home until morning." A small smile played at the corners of Ellie's mouth. Just to talk," he confirmed. "I like talking to you." And so they did, for hours about childhoods and college years, about favorite movies and embarrassing moments, about the grief they'd both survived and the hope they were cautiously nurturing. Somewhere around midnight, Ellie's head found its way to Michael's shoulder, and his arm wrapped around her, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the moon track across the night sky through the living room window. "I haven't felt this peaceful in years," Ellie murmured, her voice thick with approaching sleep. "Me neither," Michael admitted, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of her head. When morning came, he woke to find her still beside him on the sofa, both of them having drifted off in the early hours. The pale dawn light caught in her hair, highlighting strands of copper among the brown. She looked younger in sleep, the careful guard she maintained lowered in unconsciousness. He slipped away quietly, making coffee and breakfast before Lily was due to return. When Ellie woke, she seemed momentarily disoriented, then smiled shyly as the previous evening came back to her. "I didn't mean to fall asleep on you," she said, accepting the coffee he offered. "I didn't mind," he replied honestly. "It was nice not to be alone." Something shifted in her expression, a softening, a decision. "Michael, The doorbell rang, interrupting whatever she had been about to say. Lily burst in moments later, full of stories about the sleepover and immediately delighted to find Ellie there. "Did you have a grown-up party?" she asked, climbing onto the sofa between them. "Did you stay up super late? Did you have ice cream for dinner?" Ellie laughed, the tension of the moment broken by Lily's exuberance. "No ice cream, I'm afraid, but we did stay up talking." "About what?" Lily demanded. Michael and Ellie exchanged a glance over her head, a silent understanding passing between them. "About possibilities," Michael said, squeezing his daughter's shoulder. "About second chances." Lily nodded, satisfied with this cryptic answer, and launched into a detailed account of the sleepover's highlights. But throughout the morning, Michael caught Ellie watching him with new awareness, her eyes holding his a beat longer than before, her smile a shade warmer. Whatever she had been about to say remained unspoken, but somehow, he thought he understood anyway. Some things didn't need words. Some things just needed time. November arrived with a vengeance, stripping the trees bare and painting the world in shades of gray. Wind whipped through Bedford streets, carrying the promise of an early winter. Inside Michael's small duplex, however, warmth flourished. Ellie had become a fixture in their lives, not just a visitor, but a presence they counted on, looked forward to, built their weeks around. Tuesday evenings were now officially art night, with Ellie bringing new techniques for Lily to try. Sundays often found them at the church, where Ellie had begun volunteering with the children's program, teaching simple art lessons that left the kids beaming with pride. Michael watched the transformation in both Lily and Ellie with quiet amazement. His daughter bloomed under Ellie's gentle guidance, her natural artistic talent sharpening into something remarkable. And Ellie herself seemed to grow more present with each passing day. The shadows in her eyes receding, her smiles coming more freely. They hadn't defined what was happening between them, this careful dance of growing intimacy. There had been no grand declarations, no passionate embraces, just a steady accumulation of small moments, fingers brushing while washing dishes, shoulders touching during movie nights, conversations that stretched into the quiet hours when Lily was asleep. It was enough, Michael thought. After years of emotional drought, these gentle rains were slowly bringing him back to life. He could be patient. One blustery Wednesday afternoon, as Michael was repairing a broken banister at St. Martha's, Father Thomas approached with a thoughtful expression. "Your friend Ellie," the older man began, leaning against the wall as Michael worked. She's quite something. Isn't she? Michael smiled, securing a loose spindle. She is. The children adore her. Mrs. Patterson says she's never seen them so engaged in Sunday school. She has a gift, Michael agreed. Father Thomas nodded, watching Michael's hands work the wood. You know, we've been talking about expanding our after-school program, offering more than just homework help and snacks. Something enriching, creative. Michael glanced up, seeing where this was going. An art program. Exactly. Nothing elaborate, just a safe place for kids to express themselves. Learn some skills. The priest hesitated. Do you think she might be interested? It would be a paid position, though not much. Our budget is limited. Michael set down his hammer, giving the question proper consideration. I think it might be exactly what she needs, but it's not my place to speak for her. Of course, Father Thomas agreed. I'll talk to her on Sunday. Just wanted your thoughts first. As the priest walked away, Michael returned to his work, mind turning over the possibility. Ellie, teaching again, using her gifts, rebuilding her purpose. The idea filled him with a complex mix of emotions, hope, and pride, but also a flicker of anxiety. What if this new direction took her away from them? What if reconnecting with her professional identity made her realize she wanted more than their simple life could offer? He pushed the thought aside. Ellie deserved to reclaim her passion, regardless of what it meant for their relationship. She had spent too long in the shadows of grief. That evening, as they prepared dinner together, Ellie chopping vegetables while Michael seasoned chicken, and Lily set the table with careful precision, he mentioned Father Thomas's idea. An art program, Ellie repeated, her knife pausing mid-slice. At St. Martha's, for the after-school kids, Michael confirmed. Nothing fancy, just basics. Father Thomas thinks you'd be perfect. Ellie resumed chopping, her rhythm slightly off. I don't know. It's been a long time since I taught formally. It wouldn't be formal, he assured her. Just sharing what you know with kids who could use some beauty in their lives. She was quiet for a moment, the only sound the steady rhythm of her knife against the cutting board. What do you think? She finally asked, her voice carefully neutral. I think you're brilliant with children, he said honestly. I've seen how you are with Lily, how you are at Sunday school. You light up when you're teaching. But, she prompted, sensing his hesitation. Michael smiled ruefully. She knew him too well already. But selfishly, I worry it might take you away from us, that you might remember how much bigger your world used to be. Ellie set down the knife and turned to face him fully. Michael, she said softly, mindful of Lily humming to herself nearby. My world wasn't bigger before. It was just louder, busier. What I found here with you and Lily, it's not small, it's deep. Something in his chest loosened at her words. Then you'll consider it. I'll talk to Father Thomas on Sunday, she agreed. No promises, but it might be nice to be useful again. You're already useful, Lily chimed in, clearly having eavesdropped on the entire conversation. You taught me how to draw hands and faces and how to make shadows look real. That's super useful. Ellie laughed, the tension breaking. Well, when you put it that way, how could I refuse de secouture? The following Sunday, Ellie spoke with Father Thomas after service. By the time she joined Michael and Lily for their traditional post-church brunch at the local diner, her eyes were bright with an energy Michael hadn't seen before. I said yes, she announced, sliding into the booth beside Lily. 2 afternoons a week to start, with the possibility of expanding if there's interest. That's wonderful, Michael said, genuinely pleased despite his lingering concerns. Will I still see you on Tuesdays? Lily asked, the practical question of a child who had already experienced adults leaving her life. Ellie wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Absolutely. Tuesdays are sacred. This would be Mondays and Thursdays. Lily nodded, satisfied. Good, because we're going to start oil pastels next, and I've been waiting forever. Forever, huh? Ellie teased, tapping Lily's nose. All 2 weeks since I mentioned it. Their laughter was interrupted by the arrival of their food pancakes for Lily, omelets for the adults. As they ate, Ellie shared Father Thomas's vision for the program and her own ideas for expanding it. Simple projects at first, she explained, but with real techniques, not just busy work. The kind of foundational skills I used to teach my first-year university students, but adapted for younger ages. The kids will love it, Michael said, watching her animation with pleasure. This was a side of Ellie he hadn't fully seen before: the passionate educator, the confident professional. It suited her. There's something else, she added, her expression turning more serious. Father Thomas mentioned they've been contacted by a reporter from the Boston Globe. They're doing a feature on community outreach programs, and St. Martha's is being highlighted. They want to interview the program coordinators, including you, Michael guessed. She nodded. It's just a small piece, but she trailed off, her hesitation obvious. But it would mean stepping back into public view. He finished for her. Yes. She pushed her eggs around her plate. I've been somewhat of a ghost these past few years. Deliberately so. Michael reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Are you ready for that? I don't know, she admitted. Part of me wants to say no, to keep this small and private, but another part thinks maybe it's time to stop hiding. Whatever you decide, we're with you, he assured her. Right, lily pad, lily, mouthful of pancake, nodded emphatically. You'd be the best teacher in the whole newspaper, she declared once she'd swallowed. Ellie smiled, squeezing Michael's hand. I'll think about it. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Ellie threw herself into planning the art program with surprising intensity, spending hours researching accessible projects and gathering supplies. Michael helped where he could, building simple easels from scrap wood and clearing space in the church's community room. Lily appointed herself official assistant, testing projects at home to make sure they were kid-approved. The program was scheduled to launch the first week of December, just in time for holiday-themed art activities. As the date approached, Michael noticed both excitement and anxiety building in Ellie. She slept less, talked more, alternating between bursts of creative energy and moments of doubt. What if I've forgotten how to teach? She asked one evening, as they sat on his porch watching the first snow of the season drift lazily from a charcoal sky. What if I can't connect with them? You connect with Lily beautifully, he pointed out. And the Sunday school kids adore you. That's different. It's informal. No expectations. Michael turned to face her, taking both her cold hands in his. Ellie, you're not the same person you were before. You've been through the crucible and come out stronger. Deeper. That will make you a better teacher. Not a worse one. She looked at him with vulnerable eyes. How can you be so sure? Because I've seen you with Lily. You don't just teach her techniques. You see her really see her. That's the greatest gift a teacher can offer. Ellie leaned forward, resting her forehead against his shoulder. Thank you, she whispered, for believing in me when I don't. He wrapped his arms around her, drawing her closer against the chill. Always. The moment stretched between them, intimate and unguarded, when she finally pulled back. Her eyes held a new resolve. I've decided to do the interview, she said, for the Globe piece. You're sure? She nodded. It's time to stop being a ghost. Samuel wouldn't want that for me. It was the first time she'd mentioned her son's name without pain shadowing her features. Progress, Michael thought. Healing. He'd be proud of you, Michael said softly. I hope so. She stood, brushing snow from her coat. I should get home. Big day tomorrow, first planning meeting with the church volunteers. Michael walked her to her car, as had become their ritual. Before she got in, she turned to him, her expression serious. Michael, there's something I should tell you about the interview. What is it? She hesitated. If I do this, if my name appears in the paper, people might recognize it. My disappearance from the art world wasn't exactly unnoticed. He frowned slightly. What do you mean, before Samuel died? I was somewhat known in certain circles. I had a few gallery shows, some critical attention. When I vanished, there were questions, articles, even. She looked away. I just, I want you to be prepared if this stirs things up. Michael considered this new information. Were you famous? He asked, unable to keep a note of amusement from his voice. A reluctant smile tugged at her lips. Hardly. Just, you know, a rising star in a very small corner of the art world. Nothing major. Well, Professor Thornton, he said, exaggerating a bow. I'm honored to know such a distinguished artist. She swatted his arm, laughing despite herself. Stop it. I'm serious. So am I, he said, his tone shifting. Whatever comes from this, we'll handle it together. Okay. She searched his face, then nodded. Okay, as she drove away. Michael stood in the gently falling snow, contemplating this new piece of Ellie's past. There was still so much to learn about her. Layers he was only beginning to uncover. The thought excited rather than daunted him. Each revelation made her more real, more complete in his eyes. The art program's first session was scheduled for a Monday afternoon. Michael arranged to finish work early so he could pick up Lily from school and bring her to St. Martha's to watch. They arrived to find the community room transformed tables covered with protective cloths, easels set up in a semicircle, and Ellie standing nervously at the front, arranging supplies. She looked up as they entered, relief washing over her face. You came? Wouldn't miss it, Michael assured her. First day jitters. Terrified, she admitted quietly. What was I thinking I haven't taught in 3 years? And that was to college students, not children. You'll be amazing, he said. Just be yourself. Lily hugged Ellie's waist. We brought you a good luck charm, she announced, pulling a small, gift-wrapped package from her backpack. Ellie accepted it with surprise. What's this? Open it, Lily urged. Inside was a small wooden frame containing one of Lily's drawings, the three of them standing in front of what was now clearly St. Martha's Church, with Miss Ellie's art class written in careful letters above the door. Oh, Lily, Ellie breathed, her eyes filling. It's perfect. Daddy helped with the frame, Lily confessed, but I did all the art. I'll put it right here, Ellie said, placing the frame on her desk where she could see it. My first official classroom decoration. The children began arriving shortly after 12 of them, ranging from 6 to 11 years old, some from the church congregation, others from the surrounding neighborhood. They entered with varying degrees of enthusiasm and hesitation. Eyeing the art supplies with curiosity, Michael and Lily retreated to a corner to observe as Ellie gathered the group. At first, her voice was soft, uncertain. But as she began explaining the day's project, winter landscapes using watercolor resist techniques, her confidence visibly grew. She demonstrated the process, showing how white crayon marks would magically appear when painted over with blue watercolor. The children were captivated, first by the seemingly magical technique, then by Ellie's gentle guidance as she moved among them, offering encouragement and suggestions. Michael watched in admiration as she knelt beside a frustrated boy, guiding his hand without taking over, helping him discover his own solution. By the end of the session, the room was filled with vibrant winter scenes, no two alike, and the children were begging to know what they would make next time. Ellie promised something special for Thursday and sent them off with their paintings and wide smiles. As the last child left, she sank into a chair, exhausted but glowing. That went better than I expected. It was wonderful, Michael said, helping Lily gather up stray supplies. You're a natural with them. It felt good, she admitted. Like coming home to a place I'd forgotten existed. Does that mean you'll keep doing it? Lily asked. Practical as always. Ellie smiled, ruffling her hair. Absolutely. I think I might have just rediscovered my calling. The following week brought the Boston Globe reporter to St. Martha's. Ellie had prepared carefully, focusing the interview on the program rather than herself. But the reporter, a perceptive woman named Jenna Marquez, clearly sensed there was more to the story. Professor Thornton, she said, reviewing her notes as they sat in the church office. Your name sounds familiar. Have you taught elsewhere in Boston? Ellie glanced at Michael, who had stayed for moral support. Yes, she said finally. I was at Boston University until about 3 years ago. Art history and studio art. Jenna's eyes widened with recognition. Eleanor Thornton. The Eleanor Thornton who curated the Fragments of Faith exhibit at the MFA, who was shortlisted for the Callahan Prize. Ellie nodded, her posture stiffening slightly. That was a lifetime ago. Your work was extraordinary, Jenna said, her professional demeanor momentarily slipping into genuine admiration. The art world was shocked when you disappeared. There were rumors. I lost my son, Ellie said quietly. I needed to step away. The simple statement hung in the air. Jenna's expression softened with understanding. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Ellie took a deep breath. But that's not what today's story's about. It's about these children and what art can do for them. Jenna nodded, respecting the boundary. Of course. The rest of the interview focused on the program, with Ellie speaking passionately about her vision for creating a space where children could express themselves freely while learning real skills. Michael watched with pride as she articulated the importance of art education for developing minds, especially those with limited resources. After the reporter left, promising the piece would run the following Sunday, Ellie exhaled deeply. Well, that cat's out of the bag. Are you okay? Michael asked, searching her face. I think so, she said, surprising herself. It actually felt liberating to acknowledge that part of my life without falling apart. You were amazing, he assured her. Eloquent, passionate, exactly what those kids deserve. She smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that reached her eyes. It feels right, being here, doing this. Because it is right, he said simply. The article appeared in the Sunday edition, accompanied by a photograph of Ellie working with the children. It was a beautiful piece, focusing on St. Martha's community outreach efforts while also acknowledging Ellie's background in the art world. The final paragraph mentioned her return to teaching as a testament to the healing power of creative expression and community support. Michael read it over breakfast, Lily peering at the picture with excitement. Miss Ellie's famous, she declared. Hardly, Ellie demurred, though she couldn't hide her pleasure at the positive coverage. But it is nice to see the program getting attention. Father Thomas says they've already received calls from parents wanting to enroll their children. That's wonderful, Michael said, genuinely happy for her success. There's something else, she added, her tone shifting slightly. The article, it's been noticed. I got a call this morning from Gavin Reynolds at the Harrison Gallery downtown. He saw it and recognized my name. Michael set down his coffee. What did he want? To meet, to discuss the possibility of, she hesitated, of a small showing of my work, apparently. There's still interest in what I might have been creating during my artistic exile, as he put it. Ellie, that's incredible, Michael said, though he couldn't quite suppress a flicker of anxiety. The art world she was describing was far removed from their quiet life in Bedford. I haven't created anything worth showing in years, she said, shaking her head. I told him that. What did he say? That sometimes the work that emerges from darkness is the most powerful. She looked down at her hands. He wants to see my sketchbooks. At least, Michael reached across the table, taking her hand. Do you want to show them? I don't know, she admitted. Part of me is terrified. Part of me is curious to see if what I've been drawing these past few months has any value beyond personal therapy. Whatever you decide, I support you, he said. Just don't disappear on us. Okay. She squeezed his hand, understanding his fear. Never. You and Lily are my anchor now. My home. The word hung between them, weighted with meaning. Home. Not just a place, but a feeling, a belonging, something neither of them had truly felt in years. That Thursday evening, after Ellie's art class. Michael received an unexpected phone call. He was in the kitchen preparing dinner. Lily setting the table for three as had become their routine on class days. "Hello," he answered, balancing the phone between ear and shoulder as he stirred pasta sauce. "Michael Reynolds." The voice was female, vaguely familiar. "Yes, that's me. It's Catherine. Catherine Wells." Michael nearly dropped the wooden spoon. "Catherine, this is unexpected." A soft laugh, almost self-deprecating. "I know. I'm sorry to call out of the blue. I got your number from Aunt Helen." "Is everything okay?" he asked, gesturing to Lily to turn down the television in the living room. "Yes, fine. I saw the Globe article about the art program at St. Martha's." Michael leaned against the counter, puzzled. "You read local Bedford news. I've been staying with Aunt Helen since the wedding fell apart." Her voice was steady but carried an undercurrent of emotion. "I needed some time away from Boston, from everything." Michael hadn't heard what had happened after the wedding. He and Ellie had deliberately avoided gossip about Catherine and Bradley. "I'm sorry things didn't work out," he said, and was surprised to find he meant it. "Don't be," Catherine replied. "It was for the best. Bradley showed his true colors pretty quickly after our conversation at the reception. He didn't appreciate my moment of honesty." "Ah." Michael wasn't sure what else to say. "So, the article?" "Yes, I recognized your friend, Ellie Thornton. She was quite well known in certain circles before she disappeared from the art scene." Catherine paused. "I wanted to tell you, I'm glad. For both of you." Michael was taken aback by the sincerity in her voice. "Thank you. She seems remarkable. What she said at the wedding, it took courage. And seeing her now, rebuilding her life, teaching those children, it's inspiring. She is remarkable." Michael agreed softly. "And Lily, how is she?" "She's wonderful, growing too fast, smart as a whip, and showing real artistic talent under Ellie's guidance." "I'm glad," Catherine said, and again, he could hear genuine warmth in her voice. "I made a lot of mistakes. Michael, walking away from you was one thing. We weren't right for each other in the end. But I should have found a way to stay in Lily's life. I was selfish." Michael was silent, absorbing this unexpected admission. "Anyway," Catherine continued, "I just wanted to reach out, to say I'm happy for you, and to ask if it might be possible for me to see Lily sometime, just for coffee or ice cream. I'd understand if you say no." Michael glanced toward the living room, where Lily was humming to herself as she arranged napkins in perfect triangles. "I'd need to think about it," he said carefully. "Talk to Lily. Make sure it's what she wants." "Of course," and Catherine agreed quickly. "No pressure, just an open door. If you're willing, I'll think about it," he promised after hanging up. Michael stood motionless in the kitchen, processing the conversation. The pasta water boiled over, hissing as it hit the hot stovetop, startling him back to the present. When Ellie arrived 30 minutes later, bringing the scent of winter air and art supplies with her, she immediately sensed something had changed. "What happened?" she asked, helping Lily wash her hands for dinner. Michael waited until they were seated around the table, pasta served. Before sharing Catherine's call, Ellie listened thoughtfully, her expression neutral. "What are you thinking?" he asked when he'd finished. "I think it's a good sign," she said carefully, "that she's reaching out, acknowledging her mistakes. But the real question is what you think and what Lily wants." Turned, they both looked at Lily, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during the explanation. "Would Miss Catherine want to see my drawings?" she asked finally. "I'm sure she would," Michael said. Lily considered this seriously. "I think I'd like to show her, just once, to see. Then we'll arrange it," Michael assured her. "No pressure, just a short visit." Later, after Lily was in bed, Michael and Ellie sat on the porch swing, bundled against the December chill, watching their breath form clouds in the night air. "Are you okay with this?" Ellie asked softly. "Catherine coming back into your lives, even peripherally?" Michael considered the question. "I think so. She's not the same person who left us. Neither am I." The wedding changed her, Ellie observed. What I said, what she admitted publicly, it must have forced her to confront some hard truths. Your honesty has a way of doing that to people, Michael said, smiling slightly. It certainly changed me. Ellie turned to face him, her expression suddenly vulnerable. Michael, I need to tell you something. What is it? He asked, a flicker of concern rising. I'm meeting with Gavin Reynolds tomorrow, about the possibility of showing my work. He nodded, waiting for her to continue. If it happens and that's still if it would mean more visibility, more demands on my time. She took a deep breath. I want to be clear about what matters most to me. And what's that? He asked, his heart beating a little faster. This, she said simply, gesturing between them. You, Lily, what we've built together. The gallery, the art world they're part of, who I was, who I might be again in some form. But they're not my foundation anymore. Relief washed over him. I was afraid you might outgrow us, he admitted, that you'd remember how much bigger your world used to be. I told you before, she said, taking his hand between both of hers. My world wasn't bigger then. It was just louder. What I've found with you and Lily, it's everything I thought I'd lost forever. The chance to love again, to belong. Michael's heart swelled with emotion. Ellie, he began, but she shook her head. Not finished. When Samuel died, I thought that was it, that I'd used up my allotment of happiness, of love, that I didn't deserve more. Her voice caught. But being with you, with Lily, it's shown me that love isn't finite, that my heart can expand to hold both grief and joy. Ellie, he tried again, but she pressed a finger to his lips. Let me finish. I need to say this. She took a deep breath. I love you, Michael Reynolds. I love your daughter. I love the life we're building, day by day, moment by moment, and I'm not going anywhere, no matter what happens with my art career or anything else. The words hung in the frigid air between them, crystal clear and perfect. Michael felt something tight in his chest finally release a fear he'd been carrying for weeks, maybe years, the fear of being left again, of not being enough. I love you too, he said, the words coming easily, naturally. I think I have since that first day under the maple tree. You with your castle and your quiet strength, you've brought light back into our lives. Ellie, into my life. She smiled, tears gathering in her eyes but not falling. So we're doing this, really doing this. Building a life together, he clarified. Yes, if that's what you want. It's all I want, she whispered. He leaned forward, cupping her face gently between his hands, and kissed her, not their first kiss, but the first that felt like a promise, like a future being written with each heartbeat. Her lips were cold from the winter air, but warmed quickly under his, her arms sliding around his neck to draw him closer. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, she rested her forehead against his. I should go home, she said reluctantly. It's late. Or, he suggested, you could stay, not just tonight, but always. She pulled back slightly, searching his face. Are you asking what I think you're asking? Not very eloquently, he admitted with a small laugh. But yes, move in with us. Ellie, be part of our everyday, not just our special occasions. Help me raise Lily. Share our lives completely. What would Lily say? She asked, practical even in this emotional moment. Michael smiled. She'd say it's about time. She's been asking for weeks when you're going to live in our house forever like a real family. Ellie laughed, joy bubbling up through her tears. She has. Has she? You know Lily, subtle isn't in her vocabulary. Well then, Ellie said, I accept, on one condition. Name it. That you and Lily help me move my easel this weekend. It's too heavy for me alone. Deal, he said, sealing the agreement with another kiss. Inside the house, unknown to them. Lily stood at her bedroom window, watching their silhouettes on the porch. She smiled to herself, clutching her sketchbook to her chest. On the open page was a drawing of their house, but larger now, with a studio added to one side, filled with light and color. Above it, in careful letters, she had written, "Our forever home." Some stories don't begin with happily ever after. They begin with broken pieces, with loss and struggle and the courage to stay standing when it would be easier to fall. And sometimes, the most beautiful stories are the ones where love isn't a fairy tale rescue but a mutual healing, two people who have weathered separate storms, finding shelter in each other, building something stronger from the fragments of what was lost. As the December stars shone down on the small porch where Michael and Ellie sat entwined, planning their future in excited whispers, the universe seemed to affirm a simple truth. Second chances aren't about erasing the past. They're about finding the courage to love again, to build again, to believe again, despite knowing exactly how much there is to lose. And that kind of love, honest, hard-won, and clear-eyed, is the strongest kind of all.